Cool. Okay, guys. We'll kick off. So I'm just kind of going to follow on from Stuart, and I'm going to be looking at the games-based approach to coaching camogie at a youth level, which is the age 13 to 17. I suppose I'm a firm advocate and a firm believer in the games-based approach, and that's as a player and a coach. So I'm a big believer in a coaching. I've seen the positive aspects of doing it. I've seen the enjoyment players get out of having game-based training, and also I'm currently still playing. And as a player, I way prefer it than, you know, standing at a cone and going out, turning, hitting a ball back, doing drills where I don't have to think. I way prefer the type of training where I'm being challenged. So I suppose that's one of the big concepts of the games-based approach. I'm going to look at, I suppose, speak about it at a youth level from my experience and what I see important with it. So for me, there's three real elements of the game-based approach that I think, you know, are the three real take-home elements from today. And I suppose I would always check that I have these boxes ticked before when I'm planning my training sessions and when I'm looking to see, well, okay, what games am I going to use, and are these three areas ticked? So basically, the first one is using games to teach a skill or a concept. So if I'm going training and I decide I'm going to work on, you know, striking and hand passing, what games can I use to teach that skill? Or if it's a concept, if I'm working on, you know, spatial awareness or creating space or movement, what games can I use to teach that? Then I ask myself, am I replicating the game environment? So the way the game of camogie is like it's the fastest field sport in the world. So am I creating a training session with games that's replicating that sort of environment? And then I'm also asking the question, is it fun and engaging? And the games-based approach, if you use the games-based approach, you'll tick all these boxes. You know, I suppose the fun and engaging one is a big one where, you know, us as coaches, we need to enjoy the training session as much as the youths or the children need to enjoy it. So, you know, by engaging more with them in training and having fun, we'd also enjoy the games-based approach. So for me, they're the real three key concepts and three areas. You know, you always ask yourself when you're planning a training session, if you tick them boxes, your games-based approach training session will be on the money. And that's pretty much at all levels, whether it's kids, youth, or adult, but specifically at youth level. Like we're talking about the ages between 13 and 17. So we have to remember we're preparing these youths for adult camogie. But it's also such a key age group where, you know, retention is a big factor. So by having the games-based approach, all the research shows that the enjoyment they get out of it, and you know the learnings that they get and the challenges they're faced with, it all contributes to them staying on and playing camogie, which is at the end of the day, which is what it's all about for us, the coaches, particularly at the youth level. So I'm going to just go into those areas a small bit more. I'm first going to look at just using games to teach a skill or a concept. So what do I mean when I say that, about using games to teach a skill or a concept, and why do I do it? So by using a game, it makes the training session inclusive to all skill levels. And this one maybe is one where coaches will go, well, you know, I don't see that as much, or I don't think that as much. But in fact, when they get to the ages of 13, they've already mastered the skills at a basic level. So now we're trying to sharpen them being able to do it in a game. So that's what the games-based approach is to do. No, they're not going to be perfect at it at the first throw-in or the first play of a ball, you know, the first round of a game we do. But by doing it more and more, we'll bring on that skill level. So it's inclusive for everybody. Everybody can use their skill level and take part in the game. Also, the games-based approach talks about more small-sided games. So we're looking at your 2v2, your 3v3, 4v4, building that up to 7v7, 9v9, 11v11, etc. So that gives them more ball context at practicing that skill. So if I decide hand passing is one of my big work-ons of training tonight, okay, what games am I going to use to really challenge them at hand passing? Yeah. With challenging, I mean the next element of challenging them is, the games, using games-based approach will mean we'll challenge them both physically and mentally. So you'll be out on your feet playing the games. You run a game for 2 minutes flat, 6v6, the girls will be out on their feet. The intensity is in it, they're getting more contacts, they're under pressure, there's tackling, there's contact, so they're challenged physically. but then they're also challenged mentally. They're not just running out to a cone, turning and banging a ball back. They're challenged and thinking, what do I do next? Where's my teammate moving to? How, you know, have I time to strike this ball? Am I going to be hooked? Am I going to be blocked? Using games allows them allows them to have to think on their feet more, and it challenges them both, not only physically, as I mentioned, but mentally, which is hugely important. Training gets boring without that. And like, if we've all been there where you're at a workshop, maybe it's a workshop or it's anything in work, if you're doing the same thing over and over again every day, it just gets boring. But if you can, in a game, it's so unpredictable what can happen. The way a ball flies, the way a ball bounces, it keeps challenging them and it keeps everything interesting. It also allows for creativity. So while in that game, a 4v4 game, 7v7 game, we might be focusing our skill mainly on hand passing, or focusing, that's the real focus, or maybe it's about transitioning from attack to defense, or whatever it may be. But within that game, it also allows for other things to open up. Okay, so we're also trying out other skills. We all see those clips on, you know, after a game, a clip will be all over your social media or Twitters and YouTube of that inter-county player that done a backwards hand pass or flicked the ball up with their hurley and their foot. These games allow for a player just to take that opportunity if it arises and try out that skill, or maybe it just comes to them naturally. So it allows for that creativity and allows for them to take them risks without it comes natural to them. And I suppose, you know, camogie is it's such an unbelievable game, and them moments of greatness is something we all love. And by playing more and more games, players get so much more comfortable in the game situation that them moments of greatness will begin to occur more and more for them. So that's, I suppose, what for me the big reasons that we use the games approach. It's inclusive of all skill levels, it's challenging for them mentally and physically, and it allows that opportunity to be more creative. So here's an example of something maybe, you know, that I'd use every now and again. So here's just an example of a drill where we can say it's working on striking or hand passing under pressure. Okay, so you have 4 squares. We 4 squares, and we have yellows v reds. So you can have 6v6, 7v7, whatever it may be. You have 2 reds in a square, 2 yellows in another square. 2 yellows in another square. The yellows are obviously against the reds. Basically, what you're trying to do is you deliver a ball to one of your teammates in the box. If you strike the ball to their hand and your strike is over 20 meters and your teammate in the box catches it, they get out of the box, game continues. The person that struck the ball goes into the box. They get a goal. They get 3 points rewarded because they're after striking the ball from 20 yards to hand. If a hand pass is on instead and they hand pass it to somebody in the box and they swap in and out, they get 1 point. Okay, so we're working on our striking and hand passing, and we're working on it under pressure. So our skills are being worked on in a game environment, completing skills under pressure. But there's also loads of decision making and game awareness. What's going on around me? What's happening around me? I'd run that for maybe 2 minutes. This brings me back to just what we just talked about. So yes, is it challenging? Yeah, physically, mentally. You do that for 2 minutes, constantly going, constantly tackling, constantly moving ball, constantly chasing players. It's challenging mentally and physically. It's inclusive. Anybody, whatever level you can do the skill at, you're involved in that game, and you're going to improve your skills under pressure, and it allows for that creativity again. So it's just a very simple game, but it just shows an example of this is what I want to work on. This is how I bring it into a game. And this is ticking all those boxes. So there's a purpose behind the game I'm doing. The next one I'm going to talk about is replicating the game environment. So I suppose when the games-based approach first came out, I found that coaches love just putting 5v5 girls, get them bib them up and get them hand passing. But what were they actually doing? What was the purpose behind it? What was the context about it? So when we're doing our game-based approach, we have to just think, the game I'm doing, is it replicating that game environment? Okay, is it just mundane? Is there a purpose behind it? So do they need to think and make decisions? In the game of camogie, like we know you might only actually have possession of that ball for 20 seconds in a whole game of camogie. So you really need to be able to think on your feet. So are the games that we're bringing to them at training, the approach we're taking, is it replicating that game environment? Do they need to think and make decisions? Again, we talk about, are they under pressure? You tell me any game where you get to stand up, waltz around and drive a ball up the pitch. It doesn't happen in camogie. They're always under pressure, and particularly at youth level, we know how scrappy it can be. Space is hard found. There's could be a lot of bunching and things like that. So we need to try and create that sort of chaos, and it is chaos. Like at times, we need to get them used to that chaos and that pressure in the things we do with them at training, and develop them, replicate that game environment as much as possible. And another big thing is their team playing the games we're doing. Okay, by using the games-based approach, we ask ourselves them questions. Are we replicating the game environment? Are we making a decision? Have we to think? Are we under pressure? So are the girls being tackled? Is there someone chasing them down? Is there someone about to hook them in the game? And is there team play? Is it a case that they have to pass the ball off to another player? Like a 1v1 is not a game-based approach. A 2v2 is a game-based approach, because now we have our team play. Now we have pressure, and now we have decision making. So replicating the game environment is hugely important. And then the older they get, when we get up to under 17 and things, we bring our game scenarios into it. And I'll touch on that a bit later. But if we're bringing them things into context, and we look at our game we just talked about again, our 7v7 squares game, are we replicating that game environment? Okay, while we don't have goals, we're not going across the pitch, we're having 2 goals set out, but we are challenging them on their decision making. Correct? We're challenging them. Is it the right time now to hit the ball, or should I hand pass it? They're going to be under pressure. There's a team tackling against them, so they're going to have to make these decisions under pressure, and they're going to have to perform the skill under pressure. And is there team play? Okay, so have they a teammate they have to play with? Yes, they do. So that game again ticks all those boxes. And you might think that we have to have we have scoring in it. We have the 3 points for the strike. We have the 1 point for the hand pass. We don't have goals, but this can be your early games in your session. They get sick of the same thing where they're working goal to goal. Bringing something different and challenging them to think outside the box. I'll also notice here, I'd have my 4 small squares, but I wouldn't refine them outside of that. Let them use the space, let them move, let them be creative. Okay, so again, we're replicating that game environment all the time in that one. And the next element is, I suppose, the fun and engagement. Like every age group, and anyone tell me different, whether you're a senior player or a kid, you want to have fun at training. Okay, we want to enjoy it. As I said at the start, it's a hobby. And most important, if we enjoy it, we will come back the next time. We look forward to it. But creating that engagement as well, particularly at youth level, is hugely, hugely important. How many coaches, if I had to ask the question about how many coaches here harp on to their players about, girls, you're not talking, you're not communicating. We have to ask ourselves, are we applying the right type of training to encourage them to communicate? So the games-based approach will do that, because they're constantly working with another teammate, a minimum of 1 other teammate all the time. So that'll encourage that communication, okay? It'll also be fun and competitive. First question you get asked at training, if you were to ask your youth team at training, what do you want to do this evening, girls? Oh, play a game. Can we play a game? Can we play that game we done last week? They love that. And every one of us love a bit of competition. And all these games, we can bring that competition into it, okay? Hugely important stage at youth level is a learning opportunity for players. So the games-based approach, with the fun and engagement it brings, it offers so many learning opportunities for players. And that's by giving feedback and bringing them in and asking questions. And Stuart touched on this in his introduction. And I'm going to follow up and just explain it a bit more here. So we'll go back to the game we talked about already. So I would run this and I go, okay, right, girls, I'd explain the game briefly, give them what they need to know, put them out and go for 2 minutes, flat out, let's go. Let's see how many scores we can get. Let them at it, 2 minutes, pull them in. Straight away, have them all in together, ask the question, okay, what worked well? Wait for the answer, wait for the answer. If I don't get it, I'll direct the question at somebody. Now, one thing we need to watch here is we don't want them just regurgitating what we're saying. So if we're saying to them, oh, God, if you as a coach is constantly using the word, oh, movement, girls, move. We don't want them just saying movement because that's what we say. We want to really dive into that and go, if they say, oh, well, we moved very well. Well, show me, explain to me at one stage where you moved well, and really dive into it with them. Ask them what worked well, and then ask, what do we need to improve on? Get the 3 actions from them. Okay, you said we need to improve on our movement, we need to improve on our support play, and we need to improve on our first heads up, moving with our head up. give them 3 actions the next time they go back out. 2 minutes again, pull them back in, go through the same process. And then I'd always go a third time. But this time, the third time they go out, before they go, I'd split them into their own teams and let them talk about it among themselves. So we're getting the communication from them, and we're getting that engagement, and also that hugely important learning opportunity at this age group. And also it's competitive. Okay, so the very last one, we really want a winner here now, girls. Let's go for it. Yellows v reds. Have a chat among yourselves. What you need to work on going into this. We're coming away with a winner, and then they have the bit of fun and the competition with it as well. So a huge element for all this to work, games-based approach, particularly at youth level, is the why. That you always explain to your players why you're doing what we're doing. So you as a coach know when you go to the pitch why I'm working on what I'm working on, because you've planned it, but do your players know? So at the start of every training session, I'll always say to them, okay, girls, tonight we're going working on such and such and such a thing. And then before each game, okay, this game now in particular is going to work on or movement or spatial awareness or shooting, whatever it may be. I explained to them then why we're working on it. Girls, do you remember the last game, girls? You know, we put 17 balls wide. So that's why we're working on this today. So it's relative to them. They understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then at the end of the training session, okay, what's the outcome? Did this work for us? How did we get on? Did we improve it? And all the time you're engaging with them, they feel part of it. Okay, so we may not have a girl that's hugely skillful, but we may have a really good communicator in that girl. And this is where her strengths will shine, and she'll come out and she'll answer these questions for us. But no point in running the really good game sessions with loads of games, loads of really good work-ons, unless they understand why they're doing what they're doing. So just to summarize, the 3 real elements, I suppose, the real take-home message I'd hope that you would get out of this anyhow, is why we're using a games-based approach at youth level and what the importance of it is. So it challenges them, it's inclusive, and allows for that creativity. So using the games to coach the skill. We use the game to coach the skill. Is my game doing that? Ask myself that question. Then replicate, is my game replicating the game environment, the game of camogie? And is what I'm asking them to do replicating what happens out on that field? Am I making it fun and am I engaging with them? And finally, having clarity throughout, that they're fully clear on what they're doing and why they're doing it. Them 3 elements are so important. And if you tick them boxes, if you're taking that every session you go out, you're on a win straight away. I'm just going to show you, I suppose there's always questions of how we do a session and how we don't. I'm just going to show you a session plan that I do with a team I'm coaching. So we're big in the game base. I'm a big advocate of it, but my whole session doesn't have to be on it. I always like to break it up. So I have my pre-warm-up, my ball contacts in the beginning just to get them banging around some ball, and we do a warm-up. You see here then I'll have some ball to hand work or some, you know, with reaction and stuff, and they'll always be moving, and it'll always be in a crowded environment where there's people moving around them, like that chaos we have in a pitch. But then I'll bring in a decision-making game to get them thinking and working on the skill. So this training session was about transitioning from defense to attack. I bring in the decision making, and it'll be about moving a ball at speed. I'll advance that then to a game where they have to clear their lines. A ball breaks down in a goal mouth. How do we clear our lines? And then I'll finally bring that into another game, which will challenge them a small bit more, which will they have to score from a puck out within 10 seconds. My team is transitioning from defense to attack. But here's a game with a specific challenge. So that's just a sample of what I might do, what a type of workout or a type of session plan I would have regarding games approach side of things. Always come in with a bit of skill work always trying a bit of skill work, hugely important. Our skills are a fundamental part of our game, but then we challenge them and we bring it back to what the game is like in our decision-making games and our game-based scenario games. So here's just an example of some resources that are really good for games approach training at youth level and at any level. Barry Milan on Twitter has puts up some really good stuff, and the GAA Game Sense on Twitter. And also Paul Kinnerk has a really good YouTube from the GAA Coaching Conference a couple of years back. He's a really good game-based approach video. So that's worth checking out just to understand the importance of it a bit more. And if you're a real nerd like me and you love reading a bit of literature, there's some research on it, a review of a game-based approach in competitive team sports as well. That I suppose if you're on the fence, wonder why we're doing it, read that, and you'll be in no doubts of the importance of it. So that's me in a nutshell. I hope I didn't confuse the heads of you, and I hope everybody gets something out of it.
Molly, we just had a couple of questions coming in on the chat box, and if anybody wants to ask some more questions, put them up there now, and Molly can answer them. So the first two came in, they're pretty similar. So when it says inclusive of all skill levels, presumably it is beneficial to stream a training based on skill level, and something similar. So same question, issue. Do you not find these games break down if the skill levels are very different?
Yeah, the skill levels is certainly a challenging one. But if we keep, my statement with that would be, if we keep just putting them out there on their own with no pressure on them, they can perform the skill. But when we put them under pressure, that's when the skills fall apart. So how do we get them better at them skills if we don't keep putting them in a situation where they're under pressure? So that's, I suppose, the concept behind the games-based approach, particularly at the youth level. They can perform the skill perfectly standing up on their own. So now we need to get them to a stage where they do it while they're under pressure. And yeah, the games will break down. Okay, of course they're going to break down. They're never going to run perfect, but let them break down, bring them in, review it with them, and let them learn from it. Give them a small, what I would do after the 2 minutes, bring them in. Okay, it kept breaking down. Maybe we have to change it a bit. Maybe we'll focus it on just really focusing this on our hand pass, or just focus on getting our pick up first time, or whatever's really letting us down. Like as KPIs, as we call them, I suppose, in a business world, or that, but give them something specific to really focus on in the game. And then when we achieve that, that's a win. Yeah, other skills might let us down, but that specific skill we worked on within that game has improved. So that's a win, and that's something to be really positive about. And they've done it under pressure.
So the next one then is probably an observation on the skill level of coaches. Would need a few coaches to oversee all small-sided games, and can that be difficult to get everyone agreeing and understanding the game-based approach? So maybe your experience on the management of the management team for that.
Yeah, that's always, look, it's always a tricky one, but I suppose if they're like, the games-based approach is proven and it works. Okay, so if you're the coach and you firmly believe in it, you have to stand up and you have to stand up and put it out there, put them in the game scenario. And I guess it's sometimes hard to run the small-sided games when you might only have 2 helpers, and how do we watch them all? Well, if you have 20 girls at training, and a 10v10 is still better, we're focusing on a game that's not goal to goal, by changing up and playing a different game. If it's a goal, all our goal to goal games is it's up and down the pitch. Why not put out 4 goals, and then it just creates something a bit more chaos, or different, or chaos, or have 4 teams playing in one pitch with 4 goals in it, one coach watching it all and overseeing it and playing them for 2 minutes. If we think about it, there's loads of ways around it. I suppose I don't buy the approach that if a coach isn't involved, how do we get them involved? If they want to better their team and they want their players to improve, they have to buy into this. You can't perform skills under pressure in a game if you do not practice that at training. And that's, I suppose, the bottom line of a games-based approach. We have to apply what we want to happen on the pitch in a training field. And just regards the different, not having help at training, just think outside the box on it. There's always ways where you can have 4 teams going and you're overseeing them all by just setting up 4 different goals or 8 different goals on a pitch. And yellows are playing greens, blues are playing reds, and there's loads of bodies there, and it's chaos. But we're still working in a game on a specific skill. So that's only a matter really of thinking outside the box.
Okay. There's one on examples of good games. I think you gave the resources at the end. That would have come in the middle, unless you want to. It's hard to probably give the examples in the short space of time, but you want. Is roll rising slowing down the game compared to jab lifting?
I would have always said, yeah. I would have, when I was started out coaching, I would have been, Jesus, I go cracked. We've seen someone stopping the roll lift the ball. But when you think about the game of camogie, there's so many rooks in it. We have to incorporate the roll rise. It's hugely important element of our game now. the ruck ball. So it's I think when players come to youth level, explaining to them why your jab lift and why you roll lift and the understanding of it, that's like explaining that to them will stand to them, and it makes them realize why I jab lift on the run and why I don't stop when I'm on the run to roll lift it. And you'll find when they get into playing more and more games, they'll see that, and they'll see the speed of the game picks up, and they'll realize that, yeah, okay, the jab lift is more important when I'm on the run. But then, I certainly would not ignore the roll lift. Like if we look at Anne Dawson in Camogie, she's an expert at it, coming out of a ruck with roll lifting a ball, or if you're on a sideline or in a square and you need to get a ball out, a roll lift is what'll work with you. So it is still a hugely important skill in our game.
So next one, just in the session plan you had hooking. Would you have done that as a skill or in a game-based approach? Hooking is hard to coach and might be hard to replicate in a game. Typically, few opportunities in a game.
Yeah, so that was obviously, I'd say it was coming after a game where we probably missed 50 hooks or something, and I was putting it in there. But I would always, the week of a game, I would ensure one session incorporates hooking and one session incorporates blocking. And that would be just to nearly remind them of the skill. So it would be just in twos, or there'd be a bit of I put them, where they're rising the ball, moving forward, and you're taking a shot and someone is trying to hook you. I agree, it's hard actually make a game about it, but in every game we can incorporate hooking. So for example, that game I showed you there, a very simple one. In it, all of a sudden there's a point for a hook. Okay, so if we get a hook, it's all striking only, and if you get a hook, it's a point as well. So then we're working on two, but we're bringing it into a game, and it's rewarded. We're rewarding it in a game. But it's them sort of skills sometimes I always find personally are hugely important in our game, and we tend to neglect them. So it's something I always try in the week of coming up to a match. I'll always try 5-6 minutes of hooking at training and 5-6 minutes of blocking another evening, just to remind them of doing it. And to be honest, it's proven fairly successful in the stats we'd have afterwards.
So the next one is, how do you manage a range of competencies in a session? So I'm not sure whether that's a skill or fitness or game sense, but
I suppose the fitness will take care of itself in a games-based approach. Okay, if you do a games-based approach to training, the players will be challenged fitness-wise. Skills-wise, I would have a team for my training session always. What skill do I want to work on, and what element of the game? So, for example, there we've seen a session plan that I suppose my big thing was at the transition from defence to attack. So that was the concept in the training. But also, I would always pick a skill that we really want to work on, and I tell them that at the start of training. Okay, today, every time we control the ball, I want it to be one touch camogie. And you set that in their head. And when we're in the training session in the games, you reward it. Every time someone controls the ball, one touch camogie, you're shouting at them, well done, brilliant stuff, James, one touch, well done, really good. So I wouldn't try and do 10, 11 skills in a game, in a training session, or I'd focus on 1 or 2 maximum, and something in a game we want to work on, particularly at youth level.